Hey, it's Chronologically Gaming, the only channel that's perpetually retro because we're playing every video game in order of release. You've stumbled upon the Backlog, where we're trying to showcase all the video games that we missed the first time around on the live show, just to be sure that no game is left behind before we kick off 1983. Well, where are we going now? Join me all the way back in November 1975.
Baking holiday cookies has always been a family tradition at our house.
It's easy with Pillsbury sugar cookies.
I just slice, shape, and bake.
And the cookies come out hot and fresh.
And Jim and the kids do the decorating.
How about a green Santa Claus?
Oh, Daddy.
We were last in the arcades witnessing the release of the most seminal game of 1975, Gunfight. Let's see where our video game quest takes us now. Our very next game is TV Pinball, released in the beginning of November 1975. Let's check it out, starting with the advertisement flyer. Oh, this is a name we already know on Chronologically Gaming, but this is one of the first times. This is the 145th game we've seen on Chronologically Gaming and the 111th game released in the arcade. This is the very first time we've seen Exidy. Exidy Incorporated is here, the first game that we've witnessed at this point. This game most likely was programmed by Howell Ivey, but I'm actually not sure. And it wouldn't surprise me if he actually did this, so maybe way to go, Howell, or maybe not. I'm not quite sure. This game was published by lots of companies and known by lots of different names. Ramtech was also involved with this one. I had their own publishing for it. The seventh time we've seen Ramtech on Chronologically Gaming. And this advertisement flyer is showing off some other systems by Exidy that we'll see, I think, by the end of the year. So this is the very first. Oh, there's another one that we're about to see coming up next on this advertisement flyer. So the other names this goes by: Midway released this game as TV Flipper. Chicago Coin Machine released this as TV Pin Game. Cinematronics released this as Flipper Ball, which that is the very first time we've mentioned Cinematronics on Chronologically Gaming. Diversified Entertainment released this as Pinball. Elcon Industries released this as TV Pinball. So this one is the Exidy, the money game. It shows you how to win money from the industry's most revolutionary new development. Ball speeds change direction randomly. Never two games are alike. I like how they are doing that. They're advertising the games as, oh, they're all different. You'll have the different experience every single time. The color that we're seeing on this advertising flyer is actually a plexiglass overlay. It's a color overlay. The entire game is programmed in black and white. There's the arcade cabinet for TV Pinball, Exidy's first. Not a very good picture, but look at that wood grain. It's a very simple concept, simple idea, but a very, very easy, simple beginning for Exidy. There's the example of the tabletop cabinet. Really cool plexiglass overlay. And again, the color that you're seeing there is not color in the game. It's not a color television. It is an overlay providing the cover. Okay, here you go. This is the one by Cinematronics, Flipper Ball. Another money machine. Now, these companies that I'm saying is the first time that we're seeing them, that means we're seeing them first as doing video games. These companies are already pushing out and manufacturing arcade-style games, pinball games, and mechanical games. This is just the very first time we've witnessed them because we're only focusing on video games. You can see down at the bottom, they have a really good screenshot for this advertisement flyer. But this breaks down all the stats. How it costs 25 cents again to play. And you can do 50 cents for 3 plays. Again, 50 cents. November 1975 is quite a bit. Here's the advertisement flyer from Flipper. TV Flipper by Midway. The TV game with all the excitement of pinball. And we've already seen a hybrid of video game pinball and ball and paddle style games. And here's the Chicago Coin TV Pin Game. All this is the same game. I don't know how the licensing worked, but they all released different named games, but basically they're the exact same game. The industry's most revolutionary new game it boasts here. There's the example of the screenshot, and we even have a manual, but all I'm really going to show on the manual is just that it says Exidy Incorporated, TV Pinball, because all this is a schematic document. There's nothing explaining the game itself. That's all I really wanted to show. Well, we do have some gameplay footage of what TV Pinball looks like. All right, so this is a combination of Pong and Pinball. The player controls a paddle at the bottom of the screen and must keep the ball in the playing field. Pins in a grid will bounce the ball less predictably across the play area. If the ball touches the bottom of the screen, the player has lost a ball. The goal is to earn a high score. obviously. The game can also be played with 2 players in hot seat mode. The game uses a color overlay on a black and white screen and features an attract mode. This is hot seat multiplayer only, the 6th time we've seen a video game that's doing that. And to be fair, Clean Sweep was another one we saw that does this, and Ping Pong, Speed Race DX, and Highway. Clean Sweep is pretty close to having that classic arcade gameplay loop, but they don't really keep the high score going, or it doesn't change the screen. So in a way, you could say this one is another one that's really close to an arcade gameplay loop, but it still doesn't hit that spot of let's keep going for the high score attack, and the screen continues to loop and change. You could tell me in the comments below if you consider this the first video game that has that classic arcade gameplay loop, but I wouldn't call it so far. I'd say it's pretty close, but not quite. This marks the 82nd ball and paddle style video game we've seen on Chronologically Gaming. It's the 3rd pinball video game that we've seen after Ping Pong and Super Flipper. This one, though, I mean, look at the screen. Do you see what I see? This looks like another Breakout before Breakout happened. The other one we saw was Clean Sweep, but that was the ball going through all of the targets. This one's actually bouncing off, and you're breaking the blocks away. It is blows my mind. TV Pinball was the first, or one of the first Breakout variants. It's also another variant of Pong, obviously. The 75th variant of Pong we've seen so far, but I mean, that's what Breakout essentially is, a variant of Pong. It's controlled with a digital joystick. It's the 23rd video game we've seen that has that control. And it also, because we have all these other versions with different names, they sometimes have paddles depending on which publisher you went with or manufacturer. So the 92nd game that's controlled with paddles. It still is using mono for the sound, and it has that overlay to assist. The 47th game we've seen with an overlay to help assist the graphics. The 20th that we've seen in the arcade so far. This is the 142nd video game without a microprocessor, even though we've seen the first just last episode. And it's the 115th game released in North America. This means this is another game that we cannot rate ourselves. We're going to see this quite a bit when it comes to games that don't have an emulator or a simulator. Also, I'll have to give this one a no rating, and let's keep going on this quest to see every single video game. What's next? All right, next one is a fun one. We're still in the arcades. It's the middle of, at some time in November 1975, this is the release of Destruction Derby. Let's check it out together, starting with the advertisement flyer. So this one is our 146th video game we've seen on Chronologically Gaming, and the 112th game released in the arcade. It's Exidy's 2nd game, and I would say the bigger release, unless you want to think of almost Breakout as a bigger release. It's released also by Chicago Coin Machine, and it's the 7th time we've seen that company after Demolition Derby. They're really going to release this game as the Demolition Derby. So Destruction Derby or Demolition Derby, whichever one is the published, is pretty much the exact same game. And once again, I don't know for sure if Howell Ivey did this game, developed it, but it wouldn't surprise me if he did. Advertisement flyer gives us lots of things that we've kind of seen before, but with a different twist. It's a 1 or 2 player game. We have a steering wheel, we have a gear shifter, we even have a pedal down below. So we're going to be driving around on the screen. There it is by Chicago Coin. This is Demolition Derby, essentially the exact same game. You can do a 1 or 2 player game. You're going to be driving around doing a Demolition Derby style video game. That's awesome. The arcade cabinet, everything that we've seen so at this point from the 70s, it's a racing game giving you that the feeling of let's drive a car or pretend we're driving a car. And you can see they're showing roar, crash, crunch. This is the same advertisement flyer we just saw. And there it is down at the bottom right, Destruction Derby, Exidy, Sunnyvale, California. Oh, that's awesome. There's the arcade marquee for Destruction Derby. This looks very similar because a little bit later, next year, we're going to see a video game, one of the most controversial ones at the time, and this is the same game, but they just kind of reskin it. This marquee looks very similar to the one we're going to be seeing later by Exidy. All right, so besides that, look over on the left side. I got some really fun gameplay footage of the game from Brian the Blue over at the Jacobian's channel on YouTube. I'll include a link down below if you want to see the whole thing, but it's very, very well done. Destruction Derby is an arcade video game released by Exidy 1975, or sometime in November 1975, as the company's first driving game. Exidy licensed it to Chicago Coin, who sold the game as Demolition Derby, not to be confused with Demolition Derby, which is a 1984 game by Bally Midway. It's completely different. Exidy stopped producing Destruction Derby to avoid competing with the licensed version, and instead developed a game with similar mechanics. The name of that game was the controversial Death Race, a game in which a number of cars in an arena crash into each other until they are wrecked. The last remaining car is the winner. Cars are controlled with a steering wheel and a foot pedal. The game can be played by 1 or 2 players. So it does have a single-player mode if you wanted to do that, but most part you want to be playing with 2 different people. You're all driving around, smashing into the other cars, which means there's a bunch of AI-controlled cars on the screen. This is a Demolition Derby-style game and a vehicular combat-style game. The only other one we've seen up to this point has been Crash and Score that Atari did. It's the 19th video game that includes a time constraint. In other words, how many points can you get running around crashing cars until the time goes out? It's the 10th video game that's controlled with a steering wheel and pedals so far. It is the 13th video game using relative direct control. In other words, you keep turning that wheel to the right, the car will keep turning to the right, the character will not keep turning to the right. It's the 11th game where you're controlling an automobile and it actually looks like an automobile, and it's the 143rd game without a microprocessor. But I had seen some reports that it possibly has a microprocessor, but I couldn't confirm. So let me know if this did actually use a microprocessor or if it used discrete logic, DTL, or TTL. It's the 116th video game released in North America, and later this is going to be picked up by Taito and released in 1976, but I saw that Taito published it, so I'm going to set that as a totally separate release. So we'll check it out when we get to 1976. Again, we can't play it ourselves. Check out the footage if you want to over at Jacobian's, but until then, I got to give this one a no rating and keep going until we can play a game ourselves. Let's see what the next video game release is. Now it's time to go to Japan for the release of EVR Race. This one is another rare one, special one. Released at some time in November 1975, it's our 147th game. Let's see what EVR Race is. Here's the advertisement flyer. Wow. Very, very nice. If you look down on the bottom left, it's in fine print. This one is by Nintendo. The 3rd time we've seen Nintendo after Laser Clay Shooting System and Wild Gunman. This artwork is very similar to the Nintendo style, Nintendo Leisure System, as they're known right now. This is the 113th game released in the arcade so far. This one was done by Hiroshi Yamauchi, the director, producer, CEO of Nintendo right now, and Genyo Takeda. I'm sure more people were involved, but those are the 2 big ones. After Laser Clay Shooting System and Wild Gunman, Nintendo's bold new leap into the world of electronic video entertainment is with EVR Race. EVR Race is unlike anything we've seen before. It's a high-stakes horse racing or car racing experience, powered entirely by electronic video recording technology. And the advertisement flyer I'm going to show, this is the other example of it. This one came with lots of different players. You can have some with 2, 4, 6, 8, and up to 10 players, depending on which one you bought. And there's another example of the arcade advertisement flyer. But what in the world is EVR, or electronic video recording technology? It's that. It is the wave of the future right here in November 1975, where they were able to cut up and splice and send the signal for the video out depending on the situation. Gone are the spinning reels and blinking lights of traditional pachinko parlor. In EVR Race, up to 10 players bet on which of the 8 video horses or cars will win the race. Then watch as real pre-recorded footage plays out before their eyes on a large screen. The game's internal system randomly selects one of several pre-recorded race outcomes, making each session unpredictable and exciting. Once the race concludes, players who backed the winning horse or car are rewarded with medals or tokens, a tantalizing taste of victory. What makes EVR Race truly groundbreaking is its use of EVR, electronic video recording, an experimental videotape format developed by Toshiba. This allows the game to play full-motion video rather than simulate action with sprites or mechanical parts. It's a true hybrid of gambling, sports, and video technology, a concept that could signal the future of arcade entertainment. With colorful terminals, smooth animations, and an innovative betting system, Nintendo's EVR Race feels like a preview of what arcade gaming could become in the coming decade. Whether you're a gambler, a tech lover, or just curious to see the next step in arcade evolution, EVR Race is a must-try. Watch out, Vegas! Nintendo just brought the racetrack to the arcade, so it's essentially just a betting game. So as I take a look at the advertisement flyer, this one is that a one-player version or a single-player cabinet? But you can see this gets bigger. This one is the 5-player at a time variant, because all they're doing is pushing the button to bet on which horse they want. And they're trying to simulate what it would be like to go to the actual horse race. So besides the artwork that we have here, I don't have any a way to play this or simulate this myself. What I do have is over on the left side is the only footage I could find of what people actually saw when they were playing EVR Race. This one is the very first video game that is, we're going to classify it as multiplayer other, because all you're doing is betting on a horse and then watching the video. So while Nintendo's done some interesting things before this, you know, using a film projection to have laser clay shooting system, or the actual people that you shoot in Wild Gunman, that was all done with film projection. This is a new technology, but it's still video. So Nintendo's like the first full motion video creator right now. If you think of in 1975, it's just bizarre. Obviously, with all the toys that they're also manufacturing. So this might be the first and only multiplayer other video game we've ever played. It is the very first race betting game or casino gambling game we've ever seen up to this point. So it's definitely not steeplechase, where you're able to control the horses and you're running and jumping with the horses. I know you only pushed one button, but this one, you're only pushing one button to bet on a horse, but then you don't do anything. You just watch the race and see if you won. This marks the 20th video game that we've seen released in Japan thus far. I'm expecting way more from Nintendo, but right now it just seems like they're just throwing things out to see what'll fit or what'll work. I'm gonna have to give this one another no rating, but interesting to see the history and beginnings of Nintendo. It is way out there, at least video game wise. All right, let's see what our next video game release is. We're still going to hang out in the arcades even longer. Our next game is Firepower, released at sometime in November 1975. Let's take a look at the advertisement flyer. This is our 148th game, the 114th game released in the arcade, and it's the 10th time we've seen Allied Leisure Industries bringing us games like Robot, Football, Street Burners, and Ski. And from the arcade cabinets they've given in the innovation, I would say this is a very worthy competitor to Atari right now. Firepower, the most complete tank fighter ever to shoot down enemy aircraft. You are on the ground trying to avoid minefields placed in your path. If you're caught in a minefield, you'll lose your firepower and can't shoot at enemy aircraft, but only temporarily. Once the tank is out of the minefield, you can speed up using your control lever and start shooting down planes again. The faster you speed, the better your firepower and your score. So this advertisement flyer is giving us what the arcade cabinet looks like and a really small glimpse of the picture. Notice that I had no video game footage. I have no screenshot. This is a kind of a hard to come by video game now. There's the example of the arcade cabinet. Again, not doing it justice, but take a look at this one. This one is a hot seat multiplayer arcade game, and again, this one might be the contender for the very first video game with an arcade gameplay loop, but I can't verify unless I get some gameplay footage or a simulation to show for it. This is the 5th vehicular combat game we've seen so far after Tank and Tank 2, Crash and Score, and Destruction Derby. It's the 20th video game with a time constraint. Just keep shooting stuff until the time runs out, and then you can go to the next round, at least what I've read from other reviews. This is a control scheme using a digital joystick, a 4-way digital joystick, and then a shifter. This is the very first time we've seen this layout. We've seen shifters when it came to gear shifters in racing games, but this is only it's just a slow and fast gear shift, kind of like we've seen with racing cars, but all this is doing is shifting the screen to scroll. But first time we've ever seen this control scheme. It's yet another video game that does not have a microprocessor, the 144th game so far, and the 107th video game released in North America. There's the example of the arcade marquee, killer list of video games, provided that one. And then here's another advertisement of Firepower, the most complete tank fighter ever to shoot down enemy aircraft. So this is the very first time we've seen a scrolling video game with a tank that you're shooting, because before this it was just tank all on one screen. It's another push for scrolling video games out there with Speed Race and Highway. Can't rate it, so I got to give it a no rating. Let's see what our next video game is as we still hang out in the arcades. We have another really rare and fun one. This is PT-109, released at some time in November 1975. Let's check it out together. Here's the advertisement flyer for PT-109, the 115th game released in the arcade so far. This one's done by Mirko Games Incorporated, the 4th time we've seen this company, and the very first and only time we've seen a video game done by Cash Olsen. Way to go, Cash. Mirko Games has brought us games like Champion Ping Pong, Challenge, and Slam. PT-109 is a sea battle game between torpedo boats. The game supports 2- and 4-player games. When playing with 4, players control battleships instead. The goal is to destroy the opponent's ship. Ships can move at 3 different speeds. You can turn, reverse, and fire. Ships should avoid collisions with islands. Torpedoes cannot fire over islands, but the cannons of a battleship can. Sea mines add additional challenge. This game is essentially, we're going to play tank, but using boats on the ocean. This is a 4-player game, and at this point, we played 42 games that allow 4-player maximum multiplayer at the same time. Indy 800 is out there with 8-player maximum. Steeplechase is a 6-player maximum, and then we just saw EVR Race with 10 players, but I don't think that counts if all you're doing is pushing one button to bet on a horse. So sorry, EVR Race. This one is the 32nd time we've seen a video game with team play. 4 players can play all at the same time, and 2 different boats will be going with playing against 2 other different boats, just shooting everyone up. It's really, really cool, and I would love to play a simulator or find this in the arcade. It's the 6th time we've seen a vehicular combat game thus far, after Tank and Tank 2, Crash and Score, Destruction Derby. This is the very first variant of Tank, or a game that's playing like Tank, but not officially Tank so far. It's also the very first naval combat game we've ever seen. It's the very first game where you're controlling a boat or any kind of watercraft. It's the 11th time we've seen a dual shooter, because when you play against one other player, you and another player can shoot each other just like you did with Tank. This one's controlled with paddles, and it's the 93rd game controlled that way. It has relative control like we saw with the other Tank games. The 14th video game with relative direct control. It's the 3rd game we've ever seen in an aquatic theme after Shark Jaws and Maneater. And this one is using a war theme, the 8th time we've seen a video game doing that. This is a video game that has a microprocessor. I've confirmed, and I'll give you some proof with some links down below. So besides the advertisement flyer, if you flip it over the back, this is the screenshot that I got of the game. And this is all I found for footage. No one playing the game, no one's posted anything online, but we actually can see what it looks like. Very, very similar to Tank. It says it's an operator's dream. It is microcomputer controlled. It has fully fused, built-in monitor props, all the things you'd want. And there's those paddles to control. Now, what's interesting is Tank used the 2 joysticks to control. How are you controlling the action? Well, you have one button, and the one button switches between acceleration, and you push it again, and it fires, and it goes back and forth. And reverse too. So depending on that one button that you use and the little slider, that's the direction your craft's gonna turn. I love to see the gameplay and see if it works. It sounds like it doesn't, in my opinion. Here's another ad you would have seen from magazines. The microprocessor calls in the Sea Battle video game, and there it is, PT-109. Had no idea about this one until I started doing Chronologically Gaming. There's the example of the screenshot, and think of the vehicular combat games we've seen so far. This is the first time you're able to have more than 2 people all on the screen shooting each other, driving around, because we've seen Western Gun, we've seen Gunfight, but that's still just 2. This one's the first 4-player that did it. I got to give this one a no rating since we can't check it out ourselves, but now we have to continue seeing whatever the next video game is in our crazy quest to see everything. Our next video game takes us to Germany. Welcome to Germany. We're going to see the next console. Yes, another console? You bet. We see everything around here. This is the Philips Tele-Spiel ES 2201, released in the beginning of December 1975 or the end of 1975. This is the third console we've seen thus far. Most of the video games at this point we've only checked out in the arcades. I've already said it before, on this channel we are not seeing everything that was released on mainframe or terminal just because it's like dedicated consoles. It's very difficult to be able to get them, play them, and showcase all of them. We have seen the Magnavox Odyssey, the first home console, and the Interton Video 2000, also released in Germany. Of course, there's also a whole slew of dedicated consoles that are out there. We gave a little spiel when we saw Pong officially come home, and there's plenty more, but this one's special. This one is not just one game on a dedicated console. The Philips Telegame series is a series of 6 dedicated first-generation home video game consoles manufactured, released, and marketed between 1975 and 1978 by the Dutch company Philips. All Philips Telegame consoles have the contraction ES, which stands for Electronic Spiel, German for electronic game. The systems are named differently depending on the country. Tele-Spiel in Germany, Telegame in the United Kingdom, Telepeli in Finland, and Telespel in the Netherlands. In all countries, the name means Telegame. The Philips Telegame consoles were first home consoles by Philips. So this is the very first in this line of home consoles. The Philips Telegame ES 2201 is the very first console of the Philips Telegame series and the first video game console sold by Philips. In late 1975. The score is not displayed on this screen when you play any of the games. Hence, there's only 2 sliders for the score in case you range from 0 to 15. So you're not going to see the score on your television. You do it all right here with those little sliders on the console itself. It can only output in black and white. 5 games were available for the system in the form of cartridges: Badminton, Pelota, Skeet Shooting, Racing, and Ghost Chaser. On these cartridges isn't a program. There is just a few wires that connect electronically to a few parts of the internal console hardware so that a game appears on the screen. Everything you're about to see as far as the pictures here and the video footage was all brought to us by Vectrex Roly. So I cut and split up the video so we can see a little bit of the gameplay footage, because this one is another video game that we cannot simulate. It's essentially Pong-ish style games, but thanks to Vectrex Roly, you can check the links down below and get more information on this system. He did a great video on the system and then another one on the games too. All right, so this is the second home console, or sorry, the third home console we've seen so far. And this is another screenshot. This one actually looks like we're about to look at medical equipment, because, again, we're in really obscure territory when it comes to video game consoles. We're not touching every single one of those dedicated Pong consoles that are out there, but this one actually has chips or cartridges. They call them cassettes that plug in, and you have separate games. That's what we really want to see, is all the consoles that have separate games. Here's the box for the Tele-Spiel ES 2201. Every single one of the cartridges has a different number associated with it. And there's the ad you would have seen. And I think this is, Electronic Spiel down at the bottom. Look how much fun they're having playing Pong at home. And I wonder what the competition was like, because there's dedicated consoles in Europe right now, the very humble beginnings of them, but there's only 2 consoles we've seen so far. So were they like, was there a console war happening between the Pong consoles, between Interton and Philips? I'd love to know. Here's a zoomed-in view of the console. You can see the slider where you control, and then we even have Kanal and Handicap, and that's the control, an option that you can do on the games. And sometimes you can mess with those to change up a few things in the game. So it's a home console, and remember, we've only seen 3 that is allowing you to change a little option inside the game. That's pretty cool. So here we go. This is the first video game that we're going to be checking out. It's Federball. The Federball came with the system. This is the 150th game we've seen on Chronologically Gaming, the 34th we've seen on all home consoles. This is the very first video game by Philips and General Instrument Corporation. Federball, or badminton or tennis in France, is a simple 2-player Pong variant. And here we go. There's the system with Federball, because it came in the box that you could put. What's interesting is it wasn't built into the system like a built-in game. It's a cartridge that came with the box and the system that you played for probably the very first time.
To be
And here's some of the footage of Federball. All right. This one is players are going to bounce the ball back and forth, score when the opponent fails to do so. There's no on-screen scoring because you do it all on the system with the slider. The Federball cartridge came in the box, and so you're most likely is going to be your first experience because this is Pong. It's another Pong variant. You have to have two people to play. It's multiplayer competitive. It's the 83rd ball and paddle video game we've seen so far on Chronologically Gaming. The second video game associated with badminton after the Entertain Video 2000 badminton. It's the third video game we've ever seen controlled with sliders. There's two that we've already seen in the arcades, and this is the very first on home consoles. The control scheme has been paddles for the most part, so sliders is a little bit different. This is the 76th variant of Pong we've seen so far on Chronologically Gaming, and the 11th we've seen on home consoles so far. It's yet another video game without a microprocessor, the 145th, and the 7th video game that we've seen released in Germany so far. I got to give this one another no rating of all the video games we've seen up to this point, but you can understand this console compared to everything else right now, how big the next releases of consoles are going to be. Let's keep going and see all the cartridges on the Tele-Spiel ES 2201. The second cassette for the Tele-Spiel 2201 is Trainingswand. And pardon me for trying to do my best German. We're going to be going all over the world here on Chronologically Gaming. So here we go. There it is, Trainingswand. This is our 151st video game, the 35th we've seen on home consoles so far, and the second game by Philips and General Instrument Corporation. Trainingswand, or Pelota, or Mur d'Entraînement in French, is a single-player Pong variant. The player can bounce a ball against a wall on the left side of the screen with the aim of not letting it slip by. There is no on-screen scoring yet again. This is a single-player only game, and the footage on the left side, I don't really have anything for this particular game. It is the 84th ball and paddle game we've seen so far, and it's the 4th game controlled with sliders. It's the 77th Pong variant, the 12th we've seen on home consoles, but this is basically the same one we've already seen for the Entertain Video 2000, where you're just, bouncing the ball against the wall one-player style. It's the 146th game without a microprocessor and the 8th video game released originally in Germany. So Trainingswand, gotta say no rating and keep on going. What other games are there for this console? The next release is Tontaubenschiessen, the 152nd game we've seen on Chronologically Gaming and the 36th video game released on all home consoles. This is the third time we've seen a game by Philips and General Instrument Corporation. And this one, all I have again is a cassette for the game. Not a lot of artwork, if you've noticed. Every one of these came with boxes and manuals, and you can see more of the footage if you want to check out Vectrex Rolly. So let me show you what the game looks like here. This is Tontaubenschiessen. This is skeet shooting, or tir au pigeon in French. It's a target shooting game. Clay pigeons must be shot down as often as possible. The game can be played with 1 or 2 players, and essentially one player is on the right side, and the one player on the right side cannot move. All they're doing is pushing the button at the right time. The second player moves around the square that you're seeing move on the screen, and then you're just trying to shoot them. The effect, though, of them being zoomed or blown up larger than the screen is actually really cool when you consider all the games we've seen up to this point. Have you also noticed that the games we've been seeing on this home console are more closely related to the Magnavox Odyssey than the Entertain Video 2000? That one seemed to be more like a Atari Pong-ish. This one, with the way it's controlled, seems closer in line with the games we saw from the brown box. So this one is multiplayer competitive or single player. It is the 5th time we've seen a shooting gallery game that's not a light gun shooting gallery game. Games like Submarine on the Magnavox Odyssey, Attack UFO, Anti-Aircraft, and Drop Zone 4 in the arcades. This is the very first video game that's marketed as a target shooting video game. Anti-Aircraft was, like a war one, but not really like shooting targets for sport. This is the 5th video game controlled with sliders and the 147th video game with no microprocessor. The 9th video game released in Germany first. Let's keep it coming. Another one that we can't rate ourselves, so we got to give it a no rating until we can put our hands on the console and play it ourselves. Show us more games. The next release for this console is Autoslalom. Let's check it out together. The 153rd game we've seen on Chronologically Gaming, and the 37th video game released on all home consoles. This is the 4th game by Philips and General Instrument Corporation. Autoslalom is a racing game by a car racing game for one player. The player has to try to drive as far as possible without hitting the borders of the curving track. You can adjust on the system options that would change the direction and the way the track is moving. Like, notice that it can go wider, shorter, and you can readjust it. He's messing around with quite a bit from this gameplay footage. This game is single player only, unless you want to consider someone else, messing with the option dial on the system. This one marks the 14th racing or driving game we've seen on Chronologically Gaming. It's only the 2nd video game on home consoles that's a racing game right now. The only other game that we've seen that even remotely comes close to a racing game was Wipeout on the Magnavox Odyssey. This one is the 6th video game controlled with sliders, and it's, again, a 148th video game with no microprocessor. The 10th video game released first in Germany. This one is very impressive because it's trying to do, it kind of looks like Highway that we saw in the arcade. I really can't call this scrolling, though. It's trying to look like scrolling, but it's really just taking place on one screen. And even the automobile that it doesn't really resemble an automobile as you're playing it. But to tell you the truth, watching the gameplay footage, doesn't it remind you of Tennis for Two that was done on the oscilloscope? Like someone's just messing with the oscilloscope dials and making things appear on the screen. That's kind of what this looks like. But it's effective, and it works right now because it's very rare to have any kind of racing game on any home console. All right. Another one we can't rate ourselves, so we got to give this one a no rating and keep going to see the last cassette for the Tele-Spiel ES 2201. And here it is, Phantomjagd. Let's see what this one's all about. I don't have any other artwork, as you can see, for this one. This marks the 154th game that we've seen on Chronologically Gaming, and the 38th we've seen on all home consoles up to this point. This is the 5th game by Philips and General Instrument Corporation. Phantomjagd, or Ghost Hunt, or Ghost Chaser, is a timed input game for 2 players. A ghost must be hit by either player using their electronic beam. The ghost is only visible for a very brief duration. It is multiplayer competitive only, so you have to have someone else to play with. And it is the 3rd time we've played a timed input video game, after Drop Zone 4 and Touch Me. This one is the 2nd one-button video game after Drop Zone 4. In other words, you and your friend that are playing are just pushing that one red button on the controller. It's the 7th game controlled with sliders, still, even though it's just one button. And it's the 149th video game with no microprocessor. This one marks the 11th video game we've seen that's originated from Germany. This game is one of the most simplistic concepts and ideas, and we're going to see this recreated several times for home consoles. Essentially, there's 2 bars that are on the screen. One bar represents one player, the other bar represents the other player. That big square on the screen, that is the ghost. And whenever the ghost appears, you push that button and see if you can be the one who captures the ghost first. Are you fast enough? It's very, very simple Twitch timed input game. Very simplistic. So of all the games we can play on home consoles, I would give this one a low rating if I could, but I would still say we didn't play it ourselves, so we have to give it a no rating. But this marks the final cassette for the Philips, the Tele-Spiel ES 2201. This console will be followed up by other games in the Philips Telegame series. After the ES 2201, there was the ES 2203 Las Vegas, the ES 2204 Las Vegas, the ES 2207 Travelmindle, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. The ES2208 Las Vegas, then the ES2218 Las Vegas. After this series of games, we then see the Philips Video Pack G7000. So this is the history, the beginning of the Philips home consoles that aren't dedicated consoles. And on Chronologically Gaming, we actually, when we first did the live show, started off seeing the Philips Video Pack G7000. But now we're filling it up with even more games from the past. So that's it. And now we got to put all the video game showcasing and this history video game lesson on pause. Next time on the Chronologically Gaming Backlog, let's see the other games that were out at some point in 1975. We don't know the definitive release date, which means there's going to be the rarest and most obscure video games yet. That's it for today, and like I always say, Nintendo and racing? It will never catch on. Hey everybody, thanks for checking out the channel and joining me on my quest to play every single video game in order of release. We'll be streaming live every weekday at 9 p.m. Central, so join us and let us know if we missed any games along the way. This video would not be possible without Launchbox, RetroArch, and MAME. Tell all your friends there's some crazy guy named Chronologically Gaming trying to play every single video game. We have links down below that'll send you to places like our Discord and Patreon, and one that says all the video games we've ever played. If you go there, it's a list of everything, and you can click right to the game you want to see. Chronologically Gaming is the name to look for. We are perpetually retro, and we will catch you next time.